Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get the show rolling, so thank you for coming along to our seminar this afternoon. Today we're going to be telling our story. Iain and I have been working on a project for some time now with a multitude of different partners. I'm here from Kineo today to tell our story alongside Barclays. It's the College Curriculum, which is a global personal development curriculum for Barclays. Recently, we've been out to the awards and so on, and people like Rory said you should continue to tell your story. So we thought we would come here today to do that for you. So, just a little bit about us before we get the main show rolling. So my name's Rory Lawson. I'm account director at City and Guilds. And Iain?
Yeah, I'm in Trundel. Hello. So I lead the learning channels team within Barclays. So broadly responsible for getting learning content in a digital format out to our 135,000 employees.
Thank you, thank you. And together, really our focus is about improving performance through learning and technology. That's kind of our mainstay. So, Barclays College Curriculum. A little bit about it, first of all, just to kind of give you a little bit more insight. It's a collection of about 20 different programs. Each program is made up of a number of hours of learning in different resource formats. It's global. It goes out to all of the Barclays colleagues around the world. To get there, though, 20 different programs was quite a sizable task, and that's what we're going to tell you about today. So hopefully the insights you'll take away from today is kind of gain some insight into what it takes to actually deliver a curriculum of this size, the kind of the design effort that goes in behind it. How it was delivered through a really highly innovative SharePoint site, which Iain will show you later in our presentation. And the last bit is looking at the resources that went into it and how a resource-based approach to the learning has really helped the colleagues within Barclays. So, if we start with the transformation, what it meant to Barclays, so I'll hand you over to Iain.
Yeah, I guess back in when the financial crisis hit, back in around 2008, 2009, Barclays, like all large organisations, was hit with quite a number of things and was able to, or was really forced to take a good hard look at our internal culture and what we were as an organisation and what we stood for. We commissioned an external report called the SALTS report, and out of that came quite a few interesting things that we needed then to action as a business. Our global values and proposition grew out of that, and pretty quickly we needed to look at how we implemented that through our learning and performance support within the organisation. So some key recommendations that came out of that report were that we should be developing some group-wide, some Barclays-wide programs, and that we should embed our culture right across the business. We had a lot of independent business units that had their own culture and really didn't fit together as part of the organisation. So when we embarked on creating a global curriculum, we wanted to fit that together with all the values and everything that we were doing as Barclays. So what did we do when we first started that? What was the ambition? Where did we want to go? What did we want to take from this? So I just wanted to pick out a few elements from what we tried to do, the goals that we set ourselves. So we wanted to develop 20 programs of behavioural learning for our entire workforce. There were some challenges within that, so we wanted the content to be standalone and self-paced. So previously a lot of our content had been delivered through face-to-face, which meant it took a long time to get people into the space where they could actually gain from the learning that we gave them. Embedding the Barclays values and behaviours was really important. And also we had to get something that worked across the entire organisation. So with all the geographical and cultural differences and nuances across the business, we wanted to deliver something that had resonance everywhere. Working across mobile and multiple devices and accessible to all. So those were some of the key things. There were a few firsts in there for Barclays, many firsts, but it was quite an ambitious programme.
So, to give you an overview, we're just going to play a little video clip for you.
We did say we wanted it to work on all devices for everybody. That's internally. The external challenges are somewhat
Introducing the
harder.
College Curriculum. Because when it comes to developing our skills, we're all different. Some of us like to learn visually, from videos of real people and situations. Others prefer a quick read, or something interactive. Maybe you like to learn in groups, connecting with colleagues around the world. Whatever your preference, with the College Curriculum you can choose whatever suits you. It's inspired by our favourite apps and social media, and the way we explore galleries and museums. So let it inspire you. Browse, discover, have fun, be surprised. It's easy to use and it's there when you need it. For a chat with your manager about your ambitions and goals, an engaging clip to share with your team, or some quick tips on embracing a change. The College Curriculum is interesting, it's inspiring, and it's delivered in bite-sized chunks which won't eat into your day. Resources can take just 2 minutes of your time, so dip in and out whenever you want to, and explore it your way. Sort by what's popular, by subject or type, to match your style. Follow a suggested journey, or create your own path. Choose to develop the way you want to. The College Curriculum. It's a development journey that's led by you.
Okay, thank you. So that gives you a little bit of an insight into what was delivered. Just get back to the main presentation. Okay. So to get here, though, we had to kind of take many factors on board, and kind of thinking about where Barclays was on its L&D journey as well, and where employees were coming from, recognizing that things were changing, that the kind of consumer expectations were changing as well, and that Barclays were looking to do something just a little bit different out of this. So some of the things that were impacting our design thinking going into it were the kind of the nature of the organization was changing. It was reforming, going through a major transformation. And the roles were changing for people as well. The Centre of Excellence is being created, where people are accessing learning was very different. Looking at a multicultural audience as well. How do you deliver something that's going to work across 54 different countries, for example? How did that factor into our design? Multi-generational, so thinking about different attitudes to learning, what people are actually expecting. Employee expectations, a shift to what they're viewing outside of work and how they want to learn inside of work played a major impact as well. There's lots of things that were kind of feeding into the overall design kind of process. So we had 135,000 employees, 54 countries, something like 20 plus different intranet domains that we had to kind of cross over to try and deliver a solution to. Thinking about some of the kind of traditional ways that learning was carried out within Barclays, only about 20% was delivered via digital form at that point in time, and we wanted to kind of break the mold and do something different as we move forward with this program. The culture of e-learning as well within Barclays was not great at the time either. Most people associated it with kind of compliance-based training. It was more the click-through type learning that you would receive. So people didn't really resonate with the learning itself. So we had to kind of break down that barrier as we went along. So if you asked an employee in Barclays at the moment, our reckoning is that about 90% of them would say, yeah, the LMS is a place where you go to for compliance-based training, not the type of training that would improve personal development and engage them in what they wanted to do. Other things, just really simple things about trying to deliver quite a rich-based learning proposition, was global kind of positioning. So people in head office, for example, had really great kind of technology infrastructure. You could use video, etc., etc. But if you went out to kind of remote locations, so take a small village in South Africa, for example, where a branch may be, they would only have a 56k modem to play their technology through. So we had to think about all of those different constraints and try and design something that would work for all of them at the same time for a single proposition. So let's show you how it came together. We're going to start with the portal first of all, and then we'll get into the content side of it.
So we're trying to do something that's always a little tricky at these places. So I'm trying to get inside the Barclays network and show you what this actually looks like to Barclays employees. Actually, we seem to be doing reasonably well. So effectively what we did was we took a SharePoint site, and in the when we first started this, I think as Rory mentioned, there were in excess of 20 different intranet domains, and none of them talked to each other. It wasn't possible to deliver a single page of intranet content to the entire business. So those were some of the challenges we needed to overcome. We grabbed actually the first SharePoint publishing site that came into the business, and we said what we'll do is we'll take it and we'll work with it. This was the initial design that we came up for the homepage of the colleague curriculum, or the global curriculum, which is actually split into two elements. We've got a leadership training one and the colleague curriculum. Later, as we've iterated and delivered it through the business, we've given it a personal wrapper and delivered it through academies. So we've taken global content and we've delivered it through multiple portals. So it's managed in one place, but delivered through lots of local portals. And that's quite important in the way that that goes through, because we find people's engagement, if it's got their name, their business area over the top of it, is much greater than if they use a global portal. So when we came to HR, we completely redesigned the homepage. We did a lot of test and learn on the way that we built the site. So we did observed user testing, we did focus groups, we did lots of things. So when we came to redesign the homepage, we stripped out a lot of the text content which people were finding irrelevant, and we made it very action orientated, and we took a very much a mobile first approach to the content on the homepage. There are several ways you can get into the content. You can go through, you can drill down through the hierarchy, which is a sort of browse approach. You've got a way of searching, so you can search directly, and that actually is quite unique for Barclays, because mostly intranets, our search doesn't work, and so we needed to encourage people to use search because we'd put work into that side. And then, again, for HR, we gave a different way of getting into the same learning, but we did it through your section of HR, your business area. What you have at the top of the page is a navigation so that you can get to any of the content from any page. So if we went into something like the personal effectiveness section, which is effectively the colleague curriculum, we can look at a section there saying planning and organising, and immediately on our right hand side you can see that we've got the programmes that sit under that. So if we looked at something like the managing meetings programme, we can see exactly how all this comes together. Managing time, I've just loaded some of these up in the background just in case we couldn't get the connection. So managing meetings, that's the one. So at the top you've got a brief description of the programme, but pretty soon you get down into the content of the pages, and what you have, all the resources are standalone and they're all delivered on the page through these resource cards. So if I scroll down, you'll see that there's lots of resources sitting in this program of managing time. We used a content strategist to help us look at things like the calls to action. So you'll see most of the calls to action here are really precise and action orientated. So read an article, read an article. We've got other type, and on the page you can organise, at the moment we've got them organised by resource type. You can also reorganise the content on the page by by the subject area. You can also look at a different view. So here we're looking at the same resources presented as a view in a list format. So if you want people to go straight through and do things sequentially, you can do it like that. It's almost, this is where Rory mentioned earlier, we thought of a gallery scenario. So if you create, say, the artworks within a gallery, what you would do is you would organise them by a certain route, and you would have a desired path that you want to take people round the gallery to tell a story. However, if you're anything like me, you'll be piqued by the interest, you'll see a picture, you'll want to go and have a look at that, and then move on to something else that's more interesting for you. So we wanted to give people the option to explore things in their own way, but also be able to have a planned route through it as well that we'd curated. So one of the features that we devised later on, as we've iterated and built out this, on the bottom of each of these cards, you'll see this little feature here called Pin to My Board. This is something like, a bit like Pinterest, so you can actually pin things to a personal development board so that your resources, you can collate your own collection of resources. So if you come to the page and you see something, let's have a look at some of these. You may see something, and this Harvard Managed Mentor course here is 2 hours long. So the chances are when you come across that, you won't have 2 hours spare. So you could just pin that to your development board, come back when you've got a bit of time to spare and look at it. So the development board looks very similar. So this is my development board, and you'll see I've got quite a number of resources pinned into that. My role being a trusted advisor is quite important. Corporate membership, some of the research that we tap into from Deloitte, some things around positive resilience, very important in an organisation, a large organisation. So that gives you a bit of a flavour for the way we've presented all the resources. They're all standalone, but you can operate them and you can navigate them in your own way.
So let's carry on with the next part of this. So to get to the 20 programs, number of different design partners were involved. Sitting Girls Kineo took on about 5 of these. They were developed over a period of time. The key thing was to recognise how learners were going to interact with the content. They needed to be on demand, very self-paced, standalone, recognising how learners are more self-directed, and accessible at the point of need. And to do that, we set ourselves some quite stringent content goals up front. So from day one, we recognised that the content needed to be best in class, accessible to all. We wanted to answer questions like, address the question, how do I develop myself to maximise my performance? Some key things that started to come through from the design team were things like it needed to have immediate relevance back in the workplace. So if I go through this resource, at the end there is a proper call to action about how I can apply this back in the work. There were some really challenging things that came through as well. So not only did it have to be mapped to the programs, to the topics, it also had to be mapped through to things like the leadership capabilities that were coming through. Each one had to be embedded with the values and behaviours within the organisation. After all, this program was set by the SOUTS report to change the culture of the organisation through those values and behaviours. So each resource had to be contextualised with rich stories from Barclays. So at the program level, we created some very complex and rich blends using different technologies. Face-to-face was removed from a lot of the programs, but still featured in some, and was substituted for things like virtual classrooms through resources that would help you position the learning, but also then help create a thread as you moved through. Or you could just dip into one of those and take away a relevant point at the point in time. To do that, curation was key. So we defined our methodology around curation. Barclays asked us to look far and wide in terms of what possible content could be used. That's using the existing materials that they already had in their face-to-face programs, looking to the wider web, through our design partners, through our own content. So we really went far and wide and then deep into the content to identify what was right for that particular program. So we did all of the searching, we then aggregated it, came up with criteria that we were going to aggregate to. Then we selected the best resources that we felt were appropriate to the learner. So for example, Barclays have Skillsoft's books 24/7, so there are lots of good articles out there. It wasn't about just pointing them to the book cover though, it was down to the chapter, down to the page level, and the context that learning should be done in. So it was going really far in terms of thinking through the design for the end user. The context was really important. Anything like this needs to have good context. So stories, thinking about stories that work globally, thinking about the nuances within the language we were using. So we set up really well-defined learning standards around them, and then we adapted the content and wrote them in such ways that it would be useful into different types of resources. So I'm just going to try and show you some of these now. So excuse me as I switch between the technology again. So just to call out some of the types of resources we had. So we had knowledge docs, infographics, we had short interactives using the ADAPT framework, rich video, video animations and so on. So I'm just going to share one or two of these with you now. So this is an interactive, it's a infographic. So just zooming out there, as you scroll down the page, we tell a story as you go through, and then at the end of the learning, so this might be a 2-minute kind of learning, there is a call to action at the end, which is that application back to the workplace. So there's an example of an infographic. Let's see, let's go for a film.
The benefits of having self-insight, you can have better relationships, but not just at work, at home, in all aspects of your life, because you'll understand what you're good at, what you're not so good at, what you enjoy.
I think I've learned that you do have to adapt to your situation. You do have to change sometimes, and the only way to change is by looking internally.
Having the insight that actually I have something worth contributing and that it's worth taking a risk. I know I'm going to have to jump through hurdles and go through a bit of a thought process to do it, but by doing it, I feel far more fulfilled at work.
I've learned to push back, and people have accepted it, said, yeah, okay, that's fine, come back.
So just a glimpse of that one. It's about a 3-minute resource. Some of the resources only cost about £2,000 to produce. Some of them, like that one, cost about £18,000 to do. The feedback that we got from the end users, for example, on that one, someone said, wow, I never imagined I could get so much from a 3-minute video resource. So by investing in the right places and thinking about the end user in terms of how they would get the learning from that. So that one was very much hearts and minds type piece. It was choosing the right medium to deliver that within. I'll try and show you some of the adapt content here. So let's look at one for managing meetings. 1 second. So adapt is a responsive framework. So this is going to work across any device. So to get over some of the challenges of, say for example in South Africa where poor connections, for example, it's more prevalent to have a mobile device in those countries. So the content had to be responsive across all the devices. So we chose this type of approach to meet those type of needs. It moves away from the kind of click-through type technology that you see for traditional e-learning. This is more online learning. So it's more about browsing down through the page, kind of the modern kind of web experiences you'll find at home. Building in the learning, sort of interactions that develops into those as well. Taking them through a kind of a series of steps. So using these kind of like little web interactions to go through the content. Confidence sliders, questions. So kind of building in the kind of the modern learning experience there. And at the end, again, you've got over to you those kind of call to actions to take back to the workplace. I don't know if you've seen how the responsive content works, but it just simply recognizes your viewport and then just resizes the content to it. So by using this technology, we could deliver it once and you could access it on tablets, smartphones, and on the desktop as well. So it was quite clever and it was cost effective for the client. Okay, so I think we're going to be running out of time. I can show you more of these later on, but there's lots of different types of resources that we had there. Right. Okay, so getting the most from the technology. I'm going to hand back to Iain.
So anyone who's worked in a large corporate organisation, particularly a secure organisation, financial services, insurance, anything like that, you will know that technology is quite a challenge. So when we started off with this, our base browser in the organisation was Internet Explorer 6, so we couldn't do anything on HTML5. We had an accessibility charter that we'd signed up to. So Barclays has set out to be the most accessible technology company or financial company for technology in the UK marketplace. And so everything had to be fully accessible to people with disabilities. So that was really interesting approach, and that was a mindset shift as well. It was interesting working with external partners, some of whom actually helped change us and really get up there. Sometimes it was a bit more of a challenge. We delivered it through SharePoint. That was the only tool that we had that was global at the moment. So that was the way that one worked. We did a lot of first for Barclays. We wanted to deliver everything so people could get it. Little bite-sized pieces of learning, 24 hours a day, and we wanted it to be multiple device enabled.
So from an accessibility point of view, when we set out on the design program, we looked at the technology we were using and we did a major upgrade to it. We really wanted to hit the standards. We wanted to hit the highest standards as well. So we shot for AA W3C accessibility standards, and if you're developers in the room, you know that's quite a high standard. So we invested heavily in the Adapt tool. We upgraded it and delivered the technology to do that. That technology is now being shared across the open source community. That can work for other organizations as well. So that was our contribution back to the tool through doing that. Everything else in there, the PDFs, the Word documents, the video, it all was configured for an accessible delivery. So on the video, for example, you have the subtitles. Within PDFs, that was all optimized for keyboard navigation and so on. So it delivered to that mandate that Barclays set us. Thank you for that. It was quite a challenge.
And I think a key thing with that, so I was constantly told before that within Barclays that you couldn't deliver engaging content and make it accessible. You could do one or the other. I didn't believe that, and I set out to prove those guys wrong. I hope we've helped to educate people in that respect now, which is good. How we delivered it, so it was very much a partnership. We've talked about content partners, so people like Kineo and Rory. Also, my background actually is not in learning, it's in digital marketing and website development. I developed user experience design in a number of companies. So I approached this in a slightly different way to most people, and I was able, fortunately enough, to put together a team to work on this. So that included digital program management, UX design, visual designers, SharePoint developers, and actually the content strategist was absolutely key in this. So focusing our language down, making it really to the point and succinct. Anyone who's worked in HR will know that's a huge challenge. We have a program called Positive Resilience. What's that all about? It's about stress, but that's a battle maybe we lost on that. But most of our content, the language is really, really plain, simple, and user-focused. So we had, we started back in 2013, and we've delivered, first of all, the first wave of the global curriculum. We delivered a second wave, and we've now built it into the academies. So the academies bring together both the global content and technical content for each individual business areas. And what the framework that we created for the global curriculum has enabled is this same approach to be taken for the technical content in different areas. So now people can see what good looks like. They're actually starting to say, actually, we want some of that. We're going to deliver like that. We want our content to look like that too. In terms of putting it out there, lots of things that we did in terms of presentations, desk drops, campaign videos, learning days, everything really. So the results, I'll just flash that up quickly. This was like the initial drop of the college curriculum. So nearly 400 self-paced resources. We're now up in the academies up to nearly 2,000 resources, 22,000 page views in the first couple of days, really high net promoter scores, accessed in 45 countries, etc., etc. Right.
So our takeaways for you guys today, if you're looking to embark on a similar program, design thinking comes into mind for this type of project. It's about showing empathy for the learners, putting them at the center of the design and thinking about what's going to work for them first of all. Thinking through and framing the problem around some of the technology issues we had, some of the constraints we had to deal with, some of the multi-cultural kind of things. It was just thinking through those and then going, okay, if we deal with it this way, it's going to work for everybody. And we had to stick to that standard. We couldn't waver either side. The let's pick out some of these others here. So learning standards, so the communication, the tone of voice. We work to a tone of voice guideline. We work to a technical specification guideline throughout. The learning standards down to the objectives, how the content should be written, the call to action at the end, the duration of it, etc. That was all part of that work. Breaking it down into small bite-sized resources, so that kind of whole phrase with, resources, not courses type of approach to this was the only way to go. Place emphasis on performance and that application. The bit though, which is kind of really important, is that kind of marketing plan that we showed you a moment ago and how you communicate it to learners out there. Barclays intranet is vast, the company is vast. To get people to actually go to the materials was quite challenging. What's really come through was when Barclays started to kind of refine the strategy moving forward. So it wasn't just a one-off delivery. It was, okay, how do we continuously improve around this? By putting the academy infrastructure in and making it feel local. So looking at this piece here, so deliver globally, but think kind of and present locally as well. Think about what's going to be useful at the academy level. So think of an academy as like a function and the materials that they're going to use, and then embed the same resources into those, drives up the engagement and the usage of all the materials. So the whole thing was built from a continuous improvement piece. Iain, you're still on that journey, you're still working it through, still trying to get it out there to everybody. It's been a really successful project. We've picked up an award around the learning technology that went on behind it. It was nominated at the e-learning age recently. We're really proud of what we've delivered, and we're glad we're here today to tell the story. So are there any questions that you would like to ask us whilst we're here? Take the silence as a no. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.